When the Pinehurst Heights HOA imposed a $10,000 penalty on 72-year-old Navy veteran Ezra Thorne for his unappealing wheelchair ramp, board president Vivian Blackwood scoffed. "Perhaps you should have reconsidered moving here, old man. This isn't a care facility." The squeak of his wheelchair blended with the sharp tap of her designer heels retreating across flawless pavement, her costly perfume lingering in the morning breeze. What that smug suburban dictator didn't realize was that Ezra wasn't a struggling retiree living off meager benefits. He secretly owned 423 homes, nearly half the neighborhood, acquired strategically over 15 years while everyone thought he was just a poor veteran. His real estate empire, valued at $47 million, had meticulously recorded every unlawful act by the HOA. By nightfall, the woman who ridiculed a disabled war hero would learn she'd been collecting rent from the very man she aimed to ruin. And Ezra, he was poised to show 847 households what true justice meant. What would you do if an overzealous tyrant tried to financially crush a disabled veteran? Share your revenge ideas below. Where are you tuning in from? Tell us your OA horror stories. They might be next. Ezra Thorne never aspired to be a landlord, much less a neighborhood mogul. 3 years earlier, as Martha succumbed to cancer, she clasped his weathered hand in a sterile hospital room and murmured, "Swear you'll aid those who can't stand up for themselves, Ezra." The antiseptic odor mingling with her fading jasmine scent would linger in his memory forever. Having served 30 years in Navy intelligence, his spine broken by Gulf War shrapnel, he thought Pinehurst Heights would offer a peaceful retirement. Just him, his worn-out 2008 Honda Civic, and discount grocery coupons. Then his childless uncle passed, leaving him $2.3 million and a decision: let corporate predators consume his new community or take action. Martha always noted that the quietest person observes the most. So, Ezra vanished into the shadows as Navy intelligence had trained him. Through Thornfield Properties LLC, he methodically purchased every foreclosure, estate sale, and distressed property available, not for wealth, but to keep rents affordable for teachers, mechanics, and retirees like himself. Pinehurst Heights, with its 1847 homes, 340 monthly HOA fees, and rule books denser than military manuals, buzzed with diesel fumes from landscaping trucks while air conditioners droned, muffling birdsong. The slick OA newsletters, funded by endless violation fines, felt costly, and Rosa Martinez had been quietly challenging them for months. Enter Vivian Blackwood, the third-term HO president and real estate agent who treated her white BMW X5 like a warship. With her flawless blonde bob and designer workout gear pricier than most pensions, married to City Councilman Derek Blackwood, she specialized in targeting elderly and disabled residents with petty rule violations while overlooking identical issues on board members' properties. Rosa once mentioned this pattern to Ezra at the mailbox, noting her paralegal training showed HAs couldn't legally single out residents while ignoring similar violations elsewhere. A practice called selective enforcement, against state housing laws. Most residents were unaware of their rights, exactly as Vivian preferred. When Ezra installed his doctor-ordered, city-approved wheelchair ramp, Vivian swooped in, sensing vulnerability. Unauthorized structural change, she proclaimed, ignoring her own fence, which violated setback rules by 6 inches. The board meeting was a performance, a 4-1 vote for the $10,000 fine, with only Rosa dissenting. "You should have thought harder about moving here, old man. This isn't a retirement home." Vivian's words rang off the community center walls as neighbors squirmed in their folding chairs, the creak of metal echoing their collective unease. Ezra stayed silent, nodding slowly as he wheeled away, his calm more unnerving than any outburst. Unseen by others, that night, as crickets chirped and streetlights cast shadows across his deed-covered kitchen table, Ezra made a call. "Marcus," he said with the steady authority of 3 decades in military intelligence, "it's time to launch Phase 1. Retrieve the Thornfield files, all 423 properties. Yes, I know the stakes. Martha would want justice, not vengeance." The next morning, Rosa whispered to him in the grocery store's cereal aisle, "They're violating their own bylaws. I've been tracking everything." The irony was rich. She didn't know she was advising the secret owner of nearly half the neighborhood, including her son's rent-free duplex. The crunch of Ezra's wheelchair on gravel became a daily rhythm, now heavy with purpose. Each roll through the streets was a scouting mission. Every property he'd bought, every family he'd saved, every corporate landlord he'd thwarted. It was all leading to this moment, when a decorated intelligence officer with a $47 million in real estate would show Vivian Blackwood what true power meant. Vivian didn't pause to relish her win. She weaponized it. Within 48 hours, her Property Standards Initiative unleashed a barrage of harassment disguised as community enhancement. Daily violation notices stuffed Ezra's mailbox like enemy salvos mailbox 2 inches too high, 250, trash bin visible post, pickup, 500, Too many bird feeders, 350. The groan of his rusted mailbox echoed down the quiet street as neighbors hurried past, guilt in their eyes. But Vivian overreached, imposing a $500 retroactive architectural review fee for Ezra's approved ramp. Her nephew Brad, the new HOA inspector, photographed Ezra's property daily with suburban paparazzi zeal. Then the accidents began. Monday, the HOA landscaping crew, mistakenly, sprayed industrial weed killer on Ezra's cherished rose bushes, Martha's favorites. The sharp chemical stench burned his nose as 30 years of gardening withered. Tuesday, the utility company, accidentally, cut his cable during his telehealth appointment. Wednesday, a sprinkler, malfunction, flooded his driveway, Vivian's smug laughter mixing with the rush of water as she surveyed the damage. System maintenance errors, she told concerned neighbors with feigned sympathy. Ezra recognized psychological warfare, sleep deprivation, financial strain, social isolation, tactics he'd studied in the Gulf, only now delivered by a woman in designer yoga pants instead of combat gear. But Vivian missed something crucial. Navy intelligence taught Ezra patience and evidence collection over emotional reactions. While Brad snapped photos of violations, Ezra documented violations and returned Vivian's fence, 6 inches past the setback line, the treasurer's unpermitted deck, the secretary's illegal business signs. Rosa, watching from her window, initially thought grief had turned Ezra obsessive. Then she saw his evidence pile. You're building a selective enforcement case. She whispered at the post office, coffee, scented air carrying the hum of traffic. Evidence beats emotion. Ezra replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Rosa knew he was right. State law barred HOAs from targeting individuals while ignoring similar violations elsewhere, with hefty penalties for boards. Her courthouse digging uncovered more. The HOA's legal budget had surged 300% in 18 months, with massive bills for enforcement consulting, tied to board members' companies. The twist came when Rosa's son got a $2,000 fine for his 3-year approved basketball hoop. Vivian wasn't just targeting Ezra, she was punishing anyone who supported him. But Rosa underestimated Ezra's counter-strategy. That evening, she overheard him tell Marcus, log the retaliation. She's broadening her targets, perfect for the federal civil rights complaint. Rosa's blood chilled. Federal. What was Ezra plotting? By week 3, his fines hit an $18,500, and Vivian turned vicious. Adult Protective Services got an anonymous tip about a declining elderly man in unsafe conditions. The investigator found Ezra's home spotless, his mind razor sharp, but the public shaming was the goal. The final violation notice arrived with fanfare. Vivian personally delivered a foreclosure threat, posing for photos by his mailbox like a triumphant general. Pay or leave, old man. We have standards. But Rosa saw Ezra's reaction wasn't defeat. It was satisfaction, like a chess master watching an opponent blunder into checkmate. He folded the notice, added it to his evidence file, and wheeled home, humming a Navy tune. That night, Rosa overheard him. Yes, Marcus, the 30-day disclosure starts now. They've triggered the federal complaint. Let them keep digging. Vivian Blackwood had just made her fatal mistake. The foreclosure threat hit local news fast, but not as Ezra hoped. Vivian spun the story first. Disabled veteran defies community rules. A newspaper photo showed his house with a red arrow pointing to his ramp, captioned, HOA holdout. The bitter coffee in Ezra's hands matched his mood as he read. Channel 7's morning show cast Vivian as the reasonable leader facing an entitled troublemaker. Some think military service grants special privileges, she said, wiping crocodile tears under studio lights. Her media win fueled her sabotage campaign beyond Ezra's expectations. A tree service, accidentally, dropped branches on his Honda Civic, splintering glass with theatrical apologies. Pest control, mistakenly, sprayed chemicals near his air intake, forcing him to seal windows during a heat wave. Street cleaners, malfunctioned, soaking his porch with diesel-scented water. Vivian's psychological warfare was surgical security patrols idled outside his house, walkie-talkies crackling through humid nights. Motion sensors blasted light into his bedroom every 30 minutes. HOA inspectors in boots peered through his windows with veiled threats. Her bureaucratic assault was relentless. False complaints to the health department, building inspector, fire marshal, each requiring exhaustive rebuttals to wear him down. Then Rosa's Freedom of Information Act requests revealed the Blackwoods scheme. Derek had greenlit $80,47 in no-bid city contracts to family-owned shell companies for non-existent or overpriced work. They're not just robbing the HOA, she whispered to Ezra behind the library's musty books. They're stealing from everyone. Ezra's calm reply stunned her. Martha said follow the money. I've tracked it for 18 months through every shell company and fake invoice. Marcus is prepping federal racketeering charges. Rosa realized Ezra hadn't been a victim. He'd been running a counterintelligence op with military precision, documenting every accident, an illegal act like war crimes. But Vivian escalated further. Someone loosened Rosa's lug nuts after she spoke at city council for Ezra. Her mechanic said 5 more miles could have killed her. The breaking point came when 84-year-old Mrs. Morgan got a $5,000 fine for her 15-year-old garden gnomes after OA pest treatment killed her jasmine plants. Rosa found her sobbing, clutching the notice. Social Security isn't enough. They'll take my home. That image, an elderly immigrant terrorized, shattered the neighborhood's fear. 12 households met secretly at Rosa's, sharing horrors. Tom Kowalski revealed HOA contractors destroyed his son's memorial oak with no explanation. Then Ezra announced, tomorrow Marcus files federal civil rights charges. Every incident is evidence in a racketeering case. Conspiracy, terrorism, fraud. We're dismantling a criminal enterprise. The room erupted. Rosa realized she'd watched a master strategist execute a suburban sting. Outside, security headlights swept like prison searchlights, but soon those guards would face federal agents. Vivian planned her victory lap. An emergency meeting to ratify foreclosure, with Channel 7 documenting her leadership. Her radio interview oozed fake regret. Tough choices protect property values. The community center smelled of disinfectant and nervous sweat as residents filed in under buzzing fluorescents. Vivian packed the front with loyalists, but the crowd was larger, whispers fading as board members passed. She opened with flair, flashing slides of problem properties. Ezra's house prominent, citing declining values and legal precedents to justify crushing one veteran. Standards protect investments, she declared to cameras. Then the mood shifted like a storm brewing. Rosa stood, clutching a folder. Mrs. Blackwood, I'm concerned about selective enforcement and financial irregularities. Vivian's composure cracked for a split second before snapping back. That's baseless speculation. Rosa pressed on. City records show your husband approved $80,47,000 in no-bid contracts to your family's companies, while board members' identical violations go uncited. The crowd murmured like thunder. Vivian snapped. Conspiracy theories don't belong in governance. Then Ezra wheeled to the mic, his wheelchair a command post. The room hushed. 3 years ago, my dying wife asked me to help the helpless, he said, his voice ironclad. I kept that promise by quietly buying 423 properties, 49.9% of Pinehurst Heights, through Thornfield Properties LLC. The silence was deafening. Vivian's face paled as the math sank in. Just under the disclosure threshold, but enough to control the HOA. While you terrorized veterans and widows, I documented every illegal act for federal prosecutors. Not for revenge, but justice. The room exploded as lieutenants realized their quiet neighbor was no victim. He owned half their community and was a federal informant. Vivian tried to flee, but a man in a Navy suit blocked her. Federal credentials flashing. Vivian Blackwood, you're under arrest for racketeering, conspiracy, civil rights violations, and terrorism. Handcuffs clicked as cameras rolled. Derek bolted for the exit, only to crash into FBI agents, his arrest a humiliating faceplant into carpet, reeking of fear. Agent Sarah Morgan revealed the scope. Mr. Thorne contacted us 18 months ago about civil rights violations targeting vulnerable residents. His evidence built the largest HOA corruption case in federal history. Rosa realized every harassment was part of Ezra's sting. Mrs. Morgan wept as agents voided all fines, promising restitution from seized assets. Tom saluted Ezra, veteran to veteran. As agents arrested conspirators, neighbors grasped they'd watched a master dismantle terrorists with surgical precision. How long? Rosa asked amid the chaos. Since Martha's funeral, Ezra replied. Quiet people see everything. I saw a cancer to cut out. Justice is sweeter than revenge. Dawn broke with federal SUVs lining streets, coffee from an FBI command unit mixing with diesel and nervous sweat. Agent Morgan emerged from the O office with evidence boxes announcing, this is systematic community terrorism disguised as governance. The Blackwood extraction database chilled residents. A spreadsheet ranking households by vulnerability and profit. Mrs. Morgan. Priority Target 3, Limited English, a 15,000 extraction. Tom Target 7, Grief Exploitable Desecrate Memorial. Rosa. Target 12, Paralegal Knowledge Dangerous, Neutralize via Family Threats. Ezra. Priority 1, Disabled Veteran, Widowed, Potentially Wealthy, a 50,000 extraction using medical equipment leverage. The calculated cruelty stunned. This was organized crime, targeting weaknesses like predators. Federal accountants uncovered a cartel-like money laundering scheme 12 shell companies that unpaid 47,000 in fake landscaping contracts, the 340,000 in phantom legal fees, 1.7 million in taxpayer funds funneled to Derek's businesses. Emails, calls, and profiles documented their crimes with arrogant detail. Federal psychologists found PTSD, anxiety, and depression across 200 residents. Mrs. Morgan stopped gardening. Tom rarely left home. Kids stopped playing outside, fearing fines. Agent Morgan said, This mirrors communities terrorized by organized crime. Ezra's work stopped the network from spreading to 14 other communities, saving thousands. Seized assets, $4.7 million, would fund restitution. Every luxury car, vacation home, and account was liquidated. Ezra's purchases had blocked the network's expansion, saving families from ruin. Rosa saw his modest house Anu, a hub of sacrifice. Every defeat was strategic, every humiliation, evidence. By noon, Ezra's living room was a federal command center. Bankers' boxes lined walls, laptops hummed, and a crime timeline sprawled like a military briefing. Marcus spread asset seizure papers. Raicho recovers every stolen dollar. The Blackwoods will leave prison penniless. Rosa reviewed victim statements. Mrs. Morgan's sleepless nights, Tom's desecrated memorial. Agent Morgan confirmed life sentences for terrorism, racketeering, and conspiracy. Frank Miller, a retired IRS investigator, exposed her $2.3 million in unreported criminal income, adding tax evasion charges. Jennifer, Rosa's daughter, built a transparent governance platform with encrypted tablets. Dr. Maria Santos offered trauma counseling, stressing trust rebuilding. Ezra's plan included federal oversight, audits, and a victim fund. Professor Elizabeth Warren taught legal rights workshops. Helicopters overhead signaled a national security case. Ezra's strategy saved Pinehurst Heights and inspired federal probes in 12 states. Martha's photo watched over the chaos, her memory fulfilled. Tomorrow, Marcus said, we present the restoration plan oversight, transparency, compensation, and a model for democracy. Victory smelled sweeter than revenge. Vivian, in detention, launched a final terror campaign via smuggled phone. Destroy everything. Tuesday, Rosa's car was firebombed, shattering windows. Frank's home was invaded at 3 a.m., stopped by lights and a dog. Ezra's kitchen window took a sniper bullet, his training saving him. FBI tactical teams locked down the neighborhood, helicopters roaring. Agent Morgan declared, these terrorist acts will face death penalty charges. Fear permeated. Residents checked cars for bombs, kids stayed home. Ezra's hidden cameras caught everything, adding terrorism charges. Mrs. Morgan's granddaughter was followed, threatened in Vietnamese. Wiretaps revealed plans for chemical attacks and assassinations. Ezra had anticipated this, each attack adding life sentences. Let them dig, he told Agent Morgan. Every bullet is another conviction. Derek, from prison, ordered, kill them all, burn everything. Arsonists torched the federal command post at 4 a.m., destroying evidence in a toxic blaze. Mrs. Morgan's house was bombed, leaving a crater. Tom's truck exploded, burning 60% of his body. Rosa's safe house was breached in minute gunfight with cartel mercenaries. Ezra's home faced a sarin gas attack, stopped by sensors. FBI Director Morrison called it terrorism rivaling foreign attacks. Military intelligence, activated by Ezra, tracked every move. Grand juries indicted 47 conspirators across 3 states. The Houston courthouse became a fortress, Apache helicopters overhead. Judge Morrison oversaw a landmark case. Garland prosecuted. They declared war on communities. Evidence showed a 47-person network, with Derek's recorded order to kill everyone, chilling the jury. Ezra testified, I endured terrorism to protect communities, documenting every act. His surveillance captured 18 months of crimes. He hadn't entrapped, he'd refused to be terrorized. They chose murder and chemical attacks, he told the defense. The jury's 47-minute guilty verdict on 847 counts brought life sentences and death penalties. Ezra's closing, quiet people document everything. Every dollar is recovered, every terrorist jailed, every community safer. The ovation echoed for 7 minutes. 2 years later, Pinehurst Heights was a model for democratic governance. The Ezra Thorne Act passed, criminalizing HOA harassment. Martha's roses bloomed again, funded by $12.3 million in restitution. Ezra, a Medal of Freedom recipient, inspired documentaries and military studies. Rosa led his foundation, aiding 847 communities. The annual Freedom Festival drew global visitors, celebrating triumph over crime. Ezra's routine coffee, inspections, calls, now included garden stops and community potlucks. Success felt warmer than revenge. Martha's vision lived in a united neighborhood. Patience and prosecutors win. Ezra told the town hall, document everything, contact the feds, and call their bluff with American law. Share your HOA nightmares below. We investigate with federal resources. Subscribe for more stories of Americans defeating criminals. Next week, a librarian's worth $50 million embezzlement takedown. Hit like if this raged or satisfied you and share your take.